On the right device. It's showing me the little bars. The bars going. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Solutions Brewing Podcast. My name is Steve, and I'm joined by Brendan and Rob today. And at long last, after like 4 or 5 episodes from when it was first mentioned, we're gonna finally let Brendan talk. Brendan, you get to tell us about your brew day on your new system that you bought like 6 months ago.
Wow,
or like 5 months ago.
Well, didn't you guys both bought them at like
we bought it at the
time.
same. Well, no, yeah. I bought mine like a day before, and then Steve showed up like 2 days before mine. I was a little cheesed about that.
Yeah.
So the system we bought was a Grainfather.
Hey, but Steve, have you brewed on it yet?
Oh, I haven't brewed on my own. I've only, since getting the Grainfather, I've only brewed on our own system.
At the brewery. Yeah.
At the brewery. I haven't actually brewed at home at all.
Sorry, Brendan. I'm just trying to get some context. So, Brendan, He finally
brewed on it.
You finally brewed on it. And, whoops, you know what? My microphone is way the fuck over there. There we go.
I'm sorry, Rob. Now that I can hear you, can you say that again?
Right. Now that it don't sound so far away.
Well, I finally did get a chance to brew on the system. I was trying again, experimenting with low alcohol beer and trying to get something going. My first attempt at brewing on this was ruined by basically me starting a cold mash, which had to sit for 24 hours, and then getting hit by some kind of flu or plague about 12 hours after putting that in the mash tun, and not being able to get back to it for 3 or 4 days.
Right. So this is, obviously you did this before we found out about the non-alcoholic yeast, which we talked about in our last episode. So this was a different technique for making non-alcoholic.
So this was a different technique for making low alcohol beer. So the idea of the cold mash is that you get the complex sugars out of it, but not the simple fermentable ones. So you should still be able to get body and flavor in the beer without a lot of alcohol producing sugars. But when I opened that mash tun and the wort tried to jump out at me, having gained sentience in 5 days.
Little green, was it?
Yeah,
it was creatures.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it screamed when I poured it down the drain. So after a very thorough cleaning of all equipment, went to a slightly different method because I have the Grainfather, and that gives me a really good temperature control on the mash that I can do in it. I decided to go to the other extreme and also try to make a low alcohol beer using a hot mash. So typically we would mash at 65, 66, 67 degrees Celsius. And that gives you good enzyme activity. I went higher than that. I mashed at 75 to 77 degrees. The intent there being they're keeping a little bit of the alpha amylase activity, which helps gives you those long complex chains of sugar that are difficult to ferment, but still get all the body and the flavor and stuff out of the beer. That's the plan anyway. We'll see if it worked out. So there are a couple interesting items to how this was done. With the Grainfather, I basically have one vessel. It was raining outside, so I didn't want to go outside and start up my propane burner and get the brew kettle going for strike water or for boil water. So what I ended up doing is I actually heated up my strike water to boiling first in the Grainfather, then put it in my igloo cooler.
Okay.
Basically with the intent of that'll keep it hot enough for sparge after everything goes. And then I heated up the second round of water for the mash to the 70, 77, 80 degrees and added grain. The Grainfather is nice in that it has that little mash kind of strainer thing, kind of that brew in a bag system where your bag is actually stainless steel.
Yeah.
So with the perforated bottom there. So that was really nice. Got the grain in there. At first was terrified that I made the same mistake that we made with the Brewzilla at Atlas a long time ago, with not having enough strike water in there. But fortunately, a little bit of stirring, and then everything got a little less dry. Able to set up the recirc. That all worked really good. So the Grainfather set up a little recirculation pump, and there's a good system for getting it all back to the top. All that equipment worked really nice and easy. Couple things that started to give me a little bit of grief. The recirc pump comes outside the vessel, and then has a little plastic tubing that goes back inside. And when that tubing's cold, it's still a little stiff, and you're trying to kind of feed it through and get it to lay nice on top of your mat of your grain bed, and kind of circulate through. And that was a little bit challenging. So I'm wondering if that's going to loosen up after a few uses, after it gets hot fluid moving through it over a few different brew cycles, or if I just need to kind of recircuit a little bit to start with and get that plastic warmed up so that it will actually lay nice and be a little bit more ductile. Because the first time I tried to do it, I put it in and it just started pushing the press plate down. I was like, no, don't want to squeeze the grain yet. It's all supposed to just sit in there steep. But it was nice because once I got it set up and recirculated, I could walk away for an hour and just know that temperature is going to hold constant. Everything's going to do what it needs to do. Pump was working good. Started getting really nice color off the wort very quickly. Actually, it was within the 5 minutes I was mucking around with the pump and making sure everything was still going good. So that worked out really well. Getting set up for the sparge, also very easy. It had the same kind of system where you can pick that whole colander thing up, rest it on top of the system, and just pour water through. Because I had set up the other water on the side for sparge out, it was still at 95 or something degrees.
Oh, that's hot.
So that was nice, but it made it a little interesting for me to remember that I was dealing with near boiling water when setting up my pump and stuff like that, because I wasn't set up to gravity feed down. So it was one of those, like, okay, be very careful to give it just a couple inches so I don't have to muck around with priming the pump or anything like that. And then fortunately was smart enough to remember to grab a couple towels so that the discharge line of the pump I didn't just have to hold with my hands and basically slowly burn them off while I was sparging.
Or oven mitts,
Yeah, exactly. So I basically now I have a set of oven mitts dedicated to my little home brewery here for that purpose.
The Of Glove.
Yeah.
The Of Glove is awesome. Love those things.
It is good, and my wife doesn't like using it, so it's another one that I kind of steal for brewery stuff. Perfect. Whenever I need to. So, like, all told, the mash went quite well. Was able to get the sparge through reasonably well. Started heating everything up to 100. Great. Wasn't able to recirc while sparging is the other kind of thing that I wasn't too keen on. Just because you have the colander sitting on top, so it slows down the heating process a little bit while you're sparging through.
Yeah, because you're basically just letting air go to the, get in there and help cool things off, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. And you're heating from the bottom, so it's that, like, you can see it with our system at the shop as well, as that if you try to heat it without circulating, you end up cooking stuff on the coils pretty quick and everything else stays cold around it. Whereas you start moving stuff through and everything gets warmer faster. And grain takes its time dripping. So at some point I called it and pulled the grain off and got reset up for the boil, which again worked quite well. Got up to temperature fairly quickly. I think it was another 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so to get to a boil. And started going with my hop additions. I did use my little hop basket thing that I have.
The hop spider?
It's not really it's not the same as your hop spider. They'll hang off the edge of a brew kettle. It's basically like a mail tube.
Oh, okay.
So it seals on both sides and it's mesh all around. So you fill it in, you throw it in. I got a little wire so I can pull it back out.
A tea thing, like you would use.
Yeah, that sounds like a tea thing.
Yeah, it makes a little. It's very annoying for the mid-stage hop additions.
Oh, I can't really pull it out of there. No.
No, this is where the up glove comes in handy, though. You pull it out, you use the up glove to grab out the main body of it, and then you got to unscrew one part of it. So at some point, I'll figure out a better way to do that. But right now, it keeps all my hops out of the wort.
Just get another one.
They're not cheap.
I just got one of those little tea baskets. Those weren't too bad.
Yeah, that's a better way to do it. Yeah,
toss it in. And if you're gonna have a mid edition, you can just get another little tea basket and toss it into.
Yeah, or even just tea bags or something like that would also work.
You can do that. It's just like the hop spider, I find just is better for getting it in there and then fishing it out later. It just makes it easier. But teach their own.
So get into the boil here and everything, and then getting the recirc going. The only thing I did have to watch was there's always that after that first hop edition, there's always a little surge of activity that comes up as, I don't know, it's the surface area on the pellets or something just lets it all foam up. It made me determine that I really need to get some firm cap because that stuff works wonders. And briefly had me thinking about the stuff that I throw in my hot tub for the same purpose, and very quickly decided not to use that because I felt like it's probably not safe to drink.
I haven't tried it, but apparently if you throw a couple pennies in there, it'll work too.
Pennies?
Yeah.
Who has pennies anymore?
Weren't those outlawed like 20 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, they don't make them anymore. But
yeah, 15 years ago, I think it was.
If you could find some.
Like, I have one penny, and it's my lucky penny that I keep in my Pathfinder. Because if I remove that penny, I think the vehicle will stop working.
It just collapses.
Yeah. It's the luck that's holding the vehicle together at this point.
So yeah, that bit I watched it, and basically was managing it with the lid and the recirc pump and all that, which was a little frustrating. One complaint about the Grainfather with that recirc pump, it's set up to, again, it comes outside and goes up and in, and it's a little screw-on thing on the side, and they give you a little handle to hold that on at the top, which is well insulated, but you still have the bare tubing right beside those handles. My hands aren't giant, but they're big enough that if I try to grab it, I can very easily reach over the padded area. So there are a couple times that I think, oh, that's hot. Okay, well, that's another way to do this. And you got to unscrew it and move it out of the way every time you're lifting the lid up, right? It's just kind of the way it's built. So it'd be nicer if you didn't have to do that to move the lid, but it is what it is. And yeah, actually, in terms of the rest of the boil, didn't make a mess. Nothing really bad happened. Didn't burn myself. So
no spillage. No
spillage. So up till this point, it's probably one of the smoothest brews that I've done. At least, definitely the smoothest first brew with any new equipment. So after the boil, hour goes by, everything's looking great. Okay, now it's time to cool it down. The Grainfather comes with this really cool counterflow heat exchanger. Mm-hmm. Except it's not a square plate and frame exchanger like we have. It's a drum. It's just basically the two coils are wrapped around each other, your hot side and your cold side.
Okay.
Within this plastic drum, and so all the other tubing that you need, they store inside. That basically it looks compact and really cool. But the problem is that your one set of fittings is on the top of the cylinder, and the other set of fittings are on the bottom of the cylinder. And you need a place to rest this where you can get access to both of them. And the hoses they give you aren't terribly long. So getting from bottom to top of the cylinder is tough sometimes. So there was a little bit of an issue there with me trying to find a spot in my little laundry room there where I could rest this thing where it wouldn't roll away. But I could actually get my hoses to reach everywhere they needed to, and connect to my recirc pump for the Grainfather, which was going to push the hot wort through. Mm-hmm. And then on the discharge side, getting it into the fermenter wasn't an issue. But
I can just imagine you in your little laundry room trying to get that all done.
Yeah, pump to the hot wort inlet was an awkward distance to make work, and then also cold water inlet into the cold water inlet was a tough one to reach with the hoses I had. So it was just kind of an awkward setup. The first time I set it up, I realized that they didn't have cable clamps on the fittings there. So I set it up, I turned it around so that would fit, and then realized that I had popped off my hot water inlet. And then so I put that back on, and then I popped off my cold water inlet. And so I put that back on, and then I started everything up, started it flowing, and immediately the force of the pump pushed off the hot water out. So I was like, oh, that stops all that. And that time I did get one of my spare cable clamps and put that on. So I made sure the hot ones were clamped on. And then the cold ones, I figured, well, if it's cold, at least I can step in and deal with it. I just don't want to jump into
especially a hot water situation.
Mm-hmm. Hot water, because the water's still near boiling at this point, right? So finally got everything set up, got the water flowing good. Okay, great. I was flowing. I had extra fermenters, so I was flowing the water. The water was discharging into one fermenter because that was just the way the hosing worked. Getting back to the sink wouldn't work for me. And then the wort into the fermenter proper. Once I got it set up, the counterflow chiller worked very, very slickly. Like similar to our plate and frame, but not with the giant one that we have where you overcool everything. I was running water at whatever rate, and the wort was coming out at 15 to 20 degrees. So it was
nice.
Right where I wanted it. So that worked very slick. The annoying part is that I had to sit there and kind of balance this drum on top of the Grainfather the whole time while I was watching the fluid level and waited for when I was going to have to kick out the pump. And there was a little bit of tipping the Grainfather at the end of the whole thing to get the rest of the wort into the pump. Yeah,
because there's just a little bit of a spacing there at the bottom. So
yeah, just low. It's not perfectly it's a round drum, and your pump inlet's not at the center; it's over at the edge. So you got to tip it up a little bit. Not too much wasting, but it ended up working. Again, I just need to figure out how I want to set this thing up properly. I kind of want to set it up on like a roller bar or something like that, so that it can just kind of hang there, and then I can roll it around to wherever it needs to be.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And buy appropriately lengthed hoses and maybe just throw out the ones that they provided for the lengths that they have, because if I can set it up above my sink, and then I can have hot or cold water in, hot water out right there, and then just have longer hoses to get to the Grainfather and to the fermenter.
Yeah, that'd be a lot simpler.
And then it can just stay there, and I can backflow through it, which was easy to do afterwards, after the fact too. And it makes it easier that way. So future plans there. But that was kind of the biggest mess, was when the lines broke off and things spilled. There was a wort spill at some point in there, and I can't remember when that happened, but hot wort came out at some point too.
So you weren't completely clean. You didn't manage to
no
stave off the curse.
No, everything I spilled in the cooling stage. So but that was fun. Pitched yeast, everything went great there, so got that out of the way. Cleanup was actually pretty slick. The Grainfather is kind of a big heavy unit, so you kind of gotta clean it from the top and then dump it out. Or you can pump the water out, but flushed all the lines, and then because I couldn't run my hot water line back to the sink, I was run just to a fermenter, so I had to get that into the sink to dump it out. So that was the one big lift I had to do in the day.
That's not too
all
bad.
In all, not too bad.
Not
Cleaning out the colander was a bit of a pain in the ass. I'll say that.
Yeah, because that's like, dump into your green bin, but then trying to get all the little bits of grain out in your
that's exactly it, because it's that fine mesh colander.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the annoying part. It reminded me of why I didn't like the ruin the bag stuff. Is cleaning that bag out at the end was always a pain.
So the easy solution to that is throw it into your washing machine, like your clothes washer.
Well, it's not a bag anymore; it's a colander.
Yes, but no. When it's a bag, no, don't put a giant metal colander into the rotating drum. That's also a colander.
That could be fun.
If you like a lot of noise and stuff.
No, usually when I'm doing my brewing stuff, my kid's sleeping right above it, so I don't want to put on the loud banging washer.
But yeah, no, but that's a little tip. If you're doing brew and bag and you got to clean out the bag, so just like dump your grain where you're going to dump your grain. And I usually like to take it outside. I'm right beside an alley, so I like to just give it a couple
Just
spins.
throw it in the alley. Yeah.
Well, no, don't throw the whole thing in the alley. Spin it around a little bit so you get most of the grain bits out, and then wash it inside out in a clothes washing machine, and it comes out perfectly clean. And it's only a rinse. Like I wouldn't do like an actual wash cycle on it. I'd just do a rinse cycle and let it hang dry. And that's what I used every single time.
Yeah, that is a good tip. But when I was doing the brew and the bag stuff, that's what I was doing for the last half of it.
Okay.
Because you're absolutely right. It makes it so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my brew. So it's all fermentation went fine. My gravity was a little higher than I had planned, given that this was supposed to be a ultra low alcohol one.
That's fine. You could have just added more water.
And lost all the flavor?
Never.
But what alcohol did you roughly get to?
So yeah, I'm going to be at a 2.8.
That's still low ABV beer.
It's still low.
That's sessionable. Low. That's table beer almost.
So my original gravity was 1042.
Okay.
Which was just a little high, and I was originally targeting 1020 or something.
Okay,
so you got way high.
So I got way high. So I pulled more sugar out of that mash than I meant to, and part of that is just me probably putting in too much base malt or more than I needed, because it's a lot of the specialty grains that you're really trying to target for this and get the body and the flavor out of it. So, and going back to that non-alcoholic yeast conversation, that's a lot of the stuff they had in their guide had very, very little base malt.
Yeah.
And they'd have much lower starting gravities and lower finishing gravities. But we'll see. Hopefully one day I can play with that. And the beer that I made is still sitting in its carboy secondary there under airlock. And I'm going to get it in the keg and carbonated one of these days. But I need to get the one fridge panels cut off and out of my garage so I can get access to my other fridge, so that I can actually cold carb it. So there's a couple steps that I still have to do here.
But you're on the path. You're almost there.
I'm farther than I've ever been in the last 6 months. Yeah.
Well, man, I should really make a couple home brews for myself here using my system.
Immediately after you deliver the 2 kegs of Goes and the 2 kegs of the pepper beer.
Yes, you should do some home brews.
Which you should
and then
make
deliver to
on your Grainfather.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've got those ones to do, and then I've got the whatchamacallit. I've got me and Kelsey's tea beer that we're making. So.
Oh, that's right. Haven't tried that yet, eh?
No, haven't tried it yet because it's the biggest thing has been tea selection. Tea selection's taken a long time. you got to find the right robust tea to put into a tea beer, or else, it won't be a good tea. So there's been many candidates selected and tested and left aside. So I think we finally found the version we're going to use and all that. But I gotta find some time this summer. The summer's like quarter over already. It's kind of crazy.
It's disappearing pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, because because Kelsey works in education, so she gets quote unquote 2 months off, but like a quarter of it's already gone, and it's like looking at the rest of our calendar. It's like, oh man, I gotta find some time here to do this one of these days or on the weekends or something like that. But yeah. Good brewing on the G, and I think that's the G30, right? The Grainfather.
I honestly can't remember. It was so long ago I bought it.
One of the smaller versions.
It was on
homebrew
sale.
Versions of the Grainfather.
It plugs into a normal socket.
Yes.
Yeah.
It only pulls 15 amps.
These are the things I know.
Well, Rob, if someone wanted to message us and tell us how they brewed on their fancy systems at home, Grainfather or equivalent, how could they do so?
Well, they can go to our website at solutionsbrewing.com. They can go to a contact us page and fill out the form there. Or if they want, they can send us an email, which is what the form does, and which goes to noproblems at solutions. Oh my god. Yes, noproblems at solutionsbrewing.com. I don't know why I fucked it up. Or you can hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at Solutions Brewing Co.
There we go. All right.
That was
so
ridiculous. I was getting it right, and then I stopped. I don't know.
Believe in yourself, Rob.
Yeah, that's right.
Believe.
He's like, no, it's going too smoothly. I gotta throw something in here.
right.
I gotta throw a wrench.
It can't be perfect. It's gotta be fucked.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good enough for an episode. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.